recording in 5, 3.
Good evening. I'm meteorologist Brett Adair. I'm here with meteorologist David Neal. We are recapping what occurred yesterday on October the 29th, 2022. We had a little tornado event across southern Mississippi, southern Alabama with an upper low system. We're also going to get into some tropical activity and just talk a little bit about what happened today. But I'm going to let David take it away here, as he was in the studio yesterday doing some excellent analysis, as you saw on our channel. We're going to get doing that on a more regular basis, and hopefully I'll be in the field next time we may have another major event. So, David, take it away.
Yeah, we're kind of looking at what happened yesterday. And by the way, we did a trial run sort of yesterday, a little bit earlier than we'd planned on doing, but it actually sort of fit for the day that we had, and we ended up having a bunch of tropical sort of Gulf of Mexico little spins that occurred and came on shore. Whether or not they hung together, Brett, depending on whether or not we had tornado ones, you could probably just, if you went back to the radar, which I should have done, you could probably trace about everything that ended up being a tornado warning to something that was a couple of 50, 60 miles offshore to begin with. So that's kind of what it was, but I sort of put the show together today to still talk about the fact that we do have that big arcing low pressure center across the middle of the U.S., mid-latitude sort of a situation now, the satellite going back and forth. There is still once again showing that. Let's do this all over again. But the Gulf of Mexico, I noticed the queue that was down there in the cooler air, and notice how quickly now the southwesterly stream is picking up again across Texas. You going back to Texas, Brad?
I've got a speaking engagement that I'm supposed to do this weekend over in Richmond, talking about the December 10th outbreak in Kentucky last year.
Yeah.
If things look a little more active, you never know. I might have to get a fill-in for that discussion.
It's like I think it's like day 7, 6, and 7 there that we get that 15% again that pops in. But already you can see the tropical moisture subtrop that's coming back into Texas there. And if you put this into a sandwich form, again, the low lifted out and separated a lot of our shear almost diurnally. By the time it was dark, a lot of this was really kind of settling down overall, but left over some of those clouds and showers into the Gulf of Mexico. It was a miserable day here in Alabama. It was up here in North Alabama. I don't know about your house.
It was pretty awful here. I think we were in the mid-60s all day, and we just had drizzly conditions all the way up until dark tonight. We should begin to clear out a little bit over the next several hours, but there's still a big cloud mass back to the west that's still got to get through here with that upper system.
I hope so. So, like you said, we did confirm some tornadoes. And again, I love these Q when they go out over the open water like that in the cooler air there in South Texas and southern Louisiana. And then we have the boundary, actually. They had a little dry slot there moving up through eastern Mississippi finally. It probably had some sunshine, I would guess, back down in South Alabama and southern Mississippi again. But there's where your front is. It includes a little bit to the north. And not exactly, a big-time cold front, Brett. There really wasn't any cold air coming in behind this.
No, not a lot. It was more of a Pacific-type front. We didn't really deal with a big thermal gradient. The biggest thing that you noted, especially there in those breaks, the dew points started to drop off a little bit, but we did get some beneficial rains across portions of central and southwest Alabama, even over an inch, especially across the southwest counties, Perry, Hale, Marengo, Choctaw, Washington. And down along the coastal counties, you can see there were even heavier rains down there, specifically in Mobile and Baldwin, because they got pounded by several individual cells, and then also got pounded by some of those tornadic cells as they came on shore.
Yeah, this is back at Little Rock. This is the STP, the storm total precipitation. What you see in reds and oranges, there's 3 and 4. Now, that's in western Arkansas. I don't think that's as bad of a drought area as eastern Arkansas and along the Mississippi River is. But once again, this is out of Mobile, showing you where obviously the heaviest rainfall was offshore. That's like an 8-9 inch tack there that goes along with that. But included there, the triangles are going to be the tornadoes that did occur across southern Alabama and southern Mississippi. And I don't know if I go into detail here. This is, Brad, I threw this in there. This is just showing you where we had the biggest temperature change, and it wasn't much. It's actually already started to warm again back into Texas, and the cloud deck and the rain was probably the reason for the blues here in Alabama and Tennessee.
Yeah, you can see where the dry slot's located there over Mississippi, Alabama, with the warming there. So that makes perfect sense. We were cool on the cool side underneath all the cloud cover and the showers.
Yeah. So, quite typically, our weather gets cyclic like this again. So we'll be looking out to the west to see what actually happens there too. And we also have to talk about those red flags. And so, been watching this during the day today, Brett. I took this right before dark again. It's easy to see there's a low level circulation coming across south of Hispaniola.
Yeah, we've got potential tropical cyclone 15 that has been, officially named not too long ago now. I think we were just talking before we came on air here. Recon has been investigating this system. They can't find anything north of a 40-mile-per-hour wind right now, and it's pretty naked swirl still, but you can
See,
start seeing some of that activity really starting to blow up on the east side now.
we've seen a lot of that this year where the low center was well out from underneath all the cloud deck. But right now, TD15 would be a named storm with, it is projected to be a hurricane, Brett, by 2 a.m. on Wednesday, south of the Caymans, south and west of Jamaica, if you will, in the Isle of Youth, but coming into an area there in southern Belize where you hate it to go anywhere, but if it's going to go somewhere, the impoverished area of Belize is not where you want one to go.
Well, no, they're very susceptible to flash flooding, and unfortunately, there's not much that can really detour this that I see. We've got a pretty good block to the north. It's
Yeah.
going to steer this thing pretty
Do you,
well to the
do you know
west.
what this is? I didn't even put a name on it, but that was a track of Mitch. You remember Mitch? And 11,000 people were missing there. That was the mudslide event there in Belize.
Absolutely, that's the biggest threat down there is heavy rainfall.
Yeah, and I threw in Hurricane Kate here. Late storms. I mean, we can have them pretty late. Now, I was actually there in '85. I was in Tallahassee going to school for Hurricane Kate, and it's they can happen. I remember we lost power, didn't have power, electricity for Thanksgiving Day. So we got 30 more days, one more month of the possibilities.
Yeah, that makes me feel a little bit young. Thanks for that. Since that
You're welcome.
'85 November 19th is my birthday, so yeah, that was the day I was born. But yeah, it does prove the point. We can have some pretty late storms in this season.
I did one of my first live shots for that hurricane down at there's a lighthouse down there south of Tallahassee at St. Mark's. And
Yep.
I was down there for that. Elena had happened a couple of months earlier, which was a pretty decent storm as well in its own right. But yeah, I did my first for WTXL television, channel 7 there, 27, excuse me, in Tallahassee, the ABC affiliate. Did my first live shot there. We were like the only people left on the air for a couple of days, myself and one of the most wonderful meteorologists I ever met, Connor Vernon. The reason I really got into TV, Connor passed away a couple of years ago, but my gosh, what a great presenter he was and a wonderful man. But he taught me everything I know. Connor taught me how to talk for 24 hours without really saying anything.
I think Connor, one of his last gigs was a chief in Dothan down there.
Yep.
I had actually talked to him quite a bit. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
very very sad.
Connor went around. He was my chief in Tallahassee, and then he left. So here's how I got my gig, Brett. Connor left about a month after he hired me to do weekends in Tallahassee. He left and took a job in Montgomery with Rich Thomas over there, and he left me there to be chief, and that's how I got that job. I got my first job there in Tallahassee because Connor left, and then he went to Austin and was a huge guy in Austin there, but I miss him very much. Used to talk to him once a month, and he was an integral part of that. But I'm glad you got to meet him too, because he was one of those kind of guys that, I mean, the guy could sell snow in Florida. He was
Right.
just a wonderful, wonderful presenter. Let's talk about this here first of all, and I want to go in and actually I still have the LSRs from yesterday. And again, I said this yesterday. Your name was Bennett because you were all in it. And let's start out from west to east and just talk about these.
Well, David, yesterday we were in, Mississippi. We took a wrong turn. We ended up going up Interstate 59 there off of 10 at Slidell. And we ended up having to break east really, really fast through the DeSoto National Forest there. We had really poor signal until we got east of Wiggins and actually hit Highway 63, where you see that first red triangle there to the
Yeah.
north. We were there talking to you as we witnessed one of these small, weak, maybe tornadoes. The circulation was pretty rapid. We just couldn't get a lot of condensation. You would see these little tendrils that might touch down from time to time. The best view of those that we had really was from our drone. But the National Weather Service office in Slidell actually went out today to survey a lot of these areas where they got reports. And so far, the only reports that they have, everybody saw the pretty infamous tornado that crossed Interstate 10 on the traffic camera at Moss Point. Right. That tornado was rated an EF1 with 107 mile per hour peak winds. It tracked 2.8 miles and it moved it was approximately 250 yards wide as it moved toward the north and northeast there. Basically, the tornado touched down near Grierson Street and Highway 63, where it snapped hardwood tree trunks and crossed 63 and Marvin Avenue, moved northeast over to Marsh, and then crossed Elder Ferry Road, where it snapped a couple of trees. When it crossed I-10, it actually blew a semi off the highway. There had to be a large wrecker come in to take care of that, but it broke off some branches nearby crossing I-10 and then the road sign, and it lifted shortly after crossing the interstate there. So that was one tornado. And then just to the northwest of that tornado there, you can see Van Cleve in the image, just northwest of Ward Bayou Wildlife Management Area. You see that little triangle. They confirmed another EF1 104 mile per hour tornado. It was only 1.25 miles in length. So, I mean, there was a little bit of damage to a home and some trees in that area where those peak winds were found. And then the final tornado, so they've confirmed 3 so far.
Are these the same two, the Moss Point and the – because I noticed the time on the LSR is 3:25 for the one that's down near Moss Point. It's an hour later for the Wade.
Yes, those could possibly be, let's see.
Circulation. I should have brought the archive radar up.
Actually, David, no. Do you remember we had the tornado that was ongoing because we watched it at Moss Point, but there was a circulation to the northwest of that one. These 2 tornadoes were going on right around the same time. The Moss Point tornado was 3:20 to 3:27, 7 minutes long. That tornado was 3:28, which was 1 minute after that, to 3:32. So these were very, very short-lived tornadoes. The other final tornado was Big Point, Mississippi, which was 5 east-southeast of Wade. You don't even have an LSR for it there. But they found an EF1 there, 107 mile an hour, literally a 1 mile path, 50 yards wide. It touched down at soccer fields at Lumcumbus Park, where freestanding metal light poles were bent, and it moved toward the north into Park Ridge Estates and broke some branches and trees. That was about it in terms of those Mississippi tornadoes. And in terms of Alabama, now those same arc bands of cells that were going in that general area moved over to Alabama, Mobile, and Baldwin counties in particular, took a pretty hard hit throughout the evening. The good news is none of the tornadoes so far have been rated higher than EF1.
Okay.
All right. So Mobile did surveys today. They really honed in on Baldwin County. So Mobile County, we're going to talk about you in a minute with some pictures that I took. But in Baldwin County, that Magnolia Springs triangle down there, literally about a half mile in length and 40 yards in width. It touched down in a field near County Road 49 southeast. Several wood poles were snapped. The age of the power poles suggested the lower bound of damage indicators, meaning if they were weaker poles, and some weak tree debris was noted. So that was a 100 mile per hour EF1.
Okay.
Bon Secours, we talked about that area last night too, just north of Gulf Shores. EF1, 110 mile per hour. That tornado was just short of a mile in path length, and it was about 110 yards wide. There were actually 3 injuries from that tornado. It began in a heavily forested area southeast of County Road 6 and then tracked northeast where the first damage was reported. A barn lost most of its tin roof, and several large and hard and softwood trees were snapped. It intensified when it crossed County Road 6, where large hardwoods and softwoods were uprooted. Peak intensity occurred just north of the county road where a manufactured home was rolled and completely destroyed. 3 individuals were inside the home and transported to the hospital with minor injuries. A pontoon boat on a trailer was dragged 30 yards and deposited on a stump, causing the boat to shift on the trailer.
Wow.
A few more hardwoods and softwoods were snapped at this location, and the tornado crossed the Bon Secours River, causing minor damage to a construction site. The tornado likely lifted shortly after this with sporadic wind damage along Bon Secours Highway. That was a 110 mile per hour EF1. So, folks, that goes to show EF1 tornado doesn't necessarily mean everything's all good. It's
No.
lower bound, but it can still hurt you. I mean, it completely rolled and destroyed a manufactured home. So, another case where mobile homes are safe in no tornado.
I don't know how many spouts that saw coming up the Mobile Bay. I mean, even after you and I went off the air, they just kept coming up through there. And there's a visual here report, water spout report from all the local media. I didn't see that video today. Did you?
I did see that.
Did
And
you?
also, the crazy thing about that point, because it's right off Point Clear there,
Right.
there is actually a tornado damage survey from Point Clear from that particular cell. It was very brief, and it touched down off the scenic Highway 98 at James Low Lane, uprooted a hardwood tree and shifted a wooden carport off its foundation blocks, and shifted a loaded trailer about 20 feet from its resting position. The tornado was only 85 miles per hour with the winds and an EF0. So still, water spouts are relatively weak, and these were the type of tornadoes that we dealt with yesterday. So no surprise that was a very weakly rated tornado. And the only other one that has been confirmed in Baldwin County was in Spanish Fort. EF1 90 mile per hour wind, had about a quarter-mile path length, and it was only 20 yards wide. Several snapped and uprooted hardwood trees southwest of Waits Lane. And it was an intermittent touchdowns. They did note that. Intermittent touchdowns. It touched down northeast, crossing Spanish Fort Boulevard, moving onto the City Hall property, where it snapped a couple pines and uprooted a hardwood tree. So the damage was just so very sporadic. It was very hard to tell, what all was damaged. You had twisted trees, but these tornadoes, these funnels can be very condensed, even when they're relatively weak over the water, very easily. But once they hit that land friction, it's really hard for them to stay on the ground unless they've got a really strong mesocyclone in the thunderstorm. And these were just not those type of storms yesterday.
What was it, a month ago when we had that incredible video from Destin that was in the bay there, Destin Harbor? If it had come on shore, that'd have been a decent sized tornado. That was one of those sort of situations. But oftentimes they parallel the coast there. And we've both seen video. I remember a guy from Louisiana who was either out on a rig. He might have been out on a rig, and he did a pan, and there was like 11 of them. That was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I remember seeing that. So I grew up in this area. It's not unusual to see them when you're out fishing or whatever the case may be, when you're out on the beach. But at this point, let's talk a little bit. Let me pull the GFS up here and just talk about the rest of the week here if we can, a little bit. And it's still going to be part of this, going to be from 18Z from earlier in the day today. But if we sort of look at this nationally, and I'm just going to put reflectivity up here for the moment. Let me see. I can actually bring Cape up here because it looks like day 7 again. I think, is it 6 or 7 that has that risk?
Yeah, I think now we've got 2 risk, maybe 5 and 6 or 6 or 7, where you got a big upper low that kind of digs out there in the western Four Corners region, and you get instability tongue that really starts to build, as you see there across Texas and up into even the middle Mississippi Valley there, with instability Cape values running above 1,000 there. It's pulling all of that activity up toward the north. You got to click on the individual days there, Dave. On that 4 through 8.
I thought I had.
There you go. No, there you go. 6, 7, 8. It may be covered up. I don't know there.
Thought I did.
Let's see here.
6, 4, 5, 6, 7. It only does individual days.
No data found. I see what it was. I think there may be a little bit of a bug there right now.
All right.
But
Anyway, you can
anyway,
see when the Cape's the highest there. That's going to be like, that's Thursday afternoon in Kansas and Oklahoma, and then that shifts a little bit. For actually, kind of look. I thought again it was going to be like an Eastern Texas sort of thing, but well, it kind of is, I guess.
it goes really out in the Panhandle region, out into Central Texas, the Big Hill Country, and then it shifts up a little bit further to the north. You can see where the Cape really builds in there on Thursday, and then into Friday it builds again. Very deep upper level low system. So you're going to have some lapse rates and you're going to have some synoptic scale influence here as well. You see the dew points there rising up as the low pressure and the cold front there begin to push into the panhandle of Texas, and you get all that moisture pooling on the east side. So yes, that severe weather threat's going to line up there. You can even see somewhat of a triple point axis
Yeah.
there in the dew point field south of Lubbock that moves, over into the Fort Worth area as we go into the weekend. So it's going to be interesting to see what transpires out there. It definitely looks like that there's going to be enough juice to fuel severe weather. And I know with that compact upper air system, there's going to be plenty of wind fields. The biggest question that I have is the turning with height. When we get these deep lows like this out there, sometimes we get flow, and we call it meridional flow, where your winds through the atmosphere are southerly in a deep layer, and sometimes that can set up more of a flood threat with deep moisture than a severe weather threat. But it looks like there's enough juice out there and enough turning with height that we're going to deal with some severe weather later in the week.
So all right, this is the looking at the EHI here, but I don't think that really filled in the whole way. So let's talk about that, and now we need to talk about. We also need to talk about the fact that there is some. It's 30 days left in the hurricane season, so let's kind of look at that. And I'll pull up. Let me just pull up some of the. Get off my desk, cat. How many times have I set this cat down tonight? Let's try this. Let's look. It's still 15 here, so there it is. And let me make sure that I get it up here so everybody can see the data. Did you and I disappear? No, I still see you, but you with me?
I am.
There you are. I don't think I can go to that full screen over there for some reason or another. But anyway, you get the gist of it here. What we're looking at is this is on the H Wharf, and it's south of Port-au-Prince. There at the moment, Haiti, the Dominican Republic at 1,005. Brett, the thing that was wild to me about this was, I think, let me make sure of this. I think this thing blew this thing up south of Jamaica.
Yes.
4,003. Well, not as bad as I thought. 983 there before coming into Belize City. Do you believe it?
No. I'm honestly, I would be happy with hurricane season to end on the Ian note this year. Ian was enough for me so far. Belize and Central America down in those areas, very difficult to chase. A lot of times when things happen down there, even with a compact system like that, you have to worry about flash flooding. That is one of the things that's very substantial and causes a lot of loss of life there. But that H Wharf model has done pretty well this
Has.
year in terms of intensification and being pretty spot on. But as you can see, several of the models here are now showing a system of some type developing and moving its way to the west. It looks like our system here that's going to move into the center of the country is going to keep us blocked pretty well from having any kind of a system,
Yeah.
a tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico. So looks like we may escape dealing with too much more hurricane activity here, hopefully.
Let's talk about these pictures that you took, and this is from where again?
All right, this is Mobile County last night. So I was located just south, a couple miles south of the National Weather Service office and the Mobile Regional Airport when I took those. I was down off of Old Pascagoula Road, pretty close to McDonald Road there, just north of Interstate 10. Actually, I was right on, I believe it's Maurice Piro Road. And I was looking north. That was actually headed toward the National Weather Service office. And you can see, I did not enhance this photo or anything,
You didn't.
but you can see that it's lit up pretty well. Well, that's because there was a power flash that happened right
Oh,
beside us as this thing was intermittently touching down. There in the center of the screen, you've got a bit of a bowl. And as the Weather Service mentioned in several of their storm reports, intermittent touchdowns. You're not going to see a fully condensed funnel there. And that's kind of what was happening here. You had a bowl in the center, and that thing was touching down off and on, and you'd get a power explosion or, a flash. So that's what we were watching for, because that was in the dark of night last night, and that was in Mobile County, just west of Theodore, off Maurice Piro Road, as it was traveling again toward the Weather Service, and they had to take cover. They had to hand over operations to the National Weather Service in Tallahassee as
oh, I
this
didn't know
approached.
that.
Yeah, as this approached their vicinity. They had two tornadoes that came very close. One went very close to the University of South Alabama. They had to take cover for that one earlier. Then this one came up. This is the second picture. You can see a little bit better there. That dark area down in the center. I mean, again, just because you don't see that fully condensed funnel cloud all the way to the ground does not mean it's not a tornado. So that's another reason it's very dangerous to watch these things at night.
It was not a, it was not a typical night, but it was one that certainly, for all the reasons that we often talk about, we came on and we just kind of stayed on, because as we were there, it really developed right about the heating of the day, around 3 or 4 o'clock into the afternoon. But always, the thing I love about the weather is it's always a little bit different. I've had days where I monitored spouts coming in off of the water, but I didn't really expect it that much yesterday. And thank goodness, because they were, we didn't have any big tornadoes.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And those type of systems, again, having all that coastal convection develop yesterday probably saved some areas, a couple counties in, because we were thinking maybe as far north as Hattiesburg, maybe even Jackson could get in on that activity. Luckily, I think the atmosphere got overworked pretty good, and it kept that instability right there along the coast. Unfortunately for those counties, but it kept it from being more of a widespread event.
Event. All right, well, let's wrap it up. We again, I appreciate Brett gave me this opportunity to be on his channel with him, but he and I have both been talking about this for about 50 years now, about trying to do something like this and sort of follow the weather with you, those who aspire to watch the weather, and there are many, 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 many of you. It's not just my grandmother that watches the weather anymore. It's a lot of people who are smart, Brad. It amazes me at how educated the general public is more and more about weather and meteorology.
Oh, absolutely. There's weather nuts everywhere. And, this is a unique thing for us. So if you're watching and you have recommendations for us, because again, we're building this for you, we want to give the best information that we can, but we also want you guys to have influence and input, because we want to know what messages resonate to you when you're in the path of these severe weather, episodes. And then when we're doing these recaps and these forecast videos, what information is also useful to you. So, definitely you can shoot me an email, Brett at livestormsmedia.com. And David and I are going to toss about a bunch of ideas. And we really hope to get this thing perfected as we go into severe weather season 2023.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm excited about, because you're a professional drone user. I've always, that was a fantasy of mine to be able to see one like that. I always thought, Brett, I was going to get video of a tornado like that by sending a camera with a balloon into it. That was sort of my dream. I was going to blow up a balloon and send a camera in. Now, I've seen some of the video that you guys are putting out, and that's exciting, because we're going to be able to show you some of that live on the air as well, while it's actually going on. Kind of hard to believe where things are going. But anyway, we appreciate you being with us here tonight. We're going to have more information for you as we go along through the rest of this week, especially if there's severe weather toward the end of the week or the weekend. And we'll let you know should something happen with this tropical system down there into the Caribbean as we move along as well. For Brett Adair, I'm meteorologist David Neal, and we'll be back with more for you right here on LSM. Do you have a title? What's the name of your channel here? Is it just LSM?
It's just Live Storms Media
Live Storms
right
Media.
now. You guys like a catchphrase? Give us some info on that too.
Oh, I got a couple. but I don't know if I can say them yet in this platform. Anyway, good night from here in North Alabama. I'm sitting up here in Fort Payne, Alabama. Brett's a little further south.
Later, guys.